living without anxiety controlling your life. It's possible. You just need to learn to see things differently. Buddhists figured this out centuries ago, and over the next 3 hours, I'm going to share those teachings with you, not as ancient philosophy, but as practical medicine for your modern mind. Tools to recover your calm, release the tension you've been carrying, and return to your center. All you need to do is listen. And gradually, gently, peace will find its way back into your life. Hello, friend. I'm genuinely glad you're here. If you'd like, leave a comment, even just a word or two about how you're feeling right now. You're not alone in this. Now make yourself comfortable. Grab a blanket, dim the lights, lie down if that feels good. This is your time. For these next 3 hours, let everything else fade into the background. Maybe anxiety visits you daily, or maybe it appears in waves. Maybe you're exhausted from fighting it, or maybe you're simply seeking deeper peace. However you got here, you're in the right place. Because what you're about to discover isn't about willpower or trying harder. It's about seeing differently. And when you see differently, everything shifts. Not because you're broken and need fixing, but because you're human and you deserve to remember what calm feels like. Buddhism is here to show you the way home. Let me tell you what Buddhism doesn't promise, because this matters more than you might think. It won't make anxiety disappear forever. It won't build an invisible shield around your nervous system. It won't turn you into someone who never feels stressed, worried, or afraid. And honestly, that's the most liberating news you'll hear today. Because what Buddhism actually offers is something far more real, far more lasting, and infinitely more powerful. It offers you a completely transformed relationship with anxiety itself. You'll still feel the flutter in your chest when uncertainty arrives. You'll still notice tension creeping into your shoulders when deadlines loom. You'll still experience that electric current of worry when someone you love is hurting. But here's what changes, and this changes everything. Anxiety will no longer be your master. Think of it this way. Right now, when anxiety shows up, it's like a wave that crashes over you and pulls you under. You get swept away, tumbling in the current, gasping for air, completely at its mercy. But after walking this Buddhist path for a while, something shifts. The waves still come. They always do. But now you know how to surf them. You feel the rise. You adjust your balance. You ride it without drowning. The wave doesn't own you anymore. This understanding comes from a teaching that's over 2,500 years old, yet speaks directly to our modern exhaustion. It's called the Four Noble Truths, and before your mind says, "That sounds complicated," let me share it the way it was always meant to be understood, as a story about waking up. 26 centuries ago, there was a young man named Siddhartha who lived in a palace. His father, terrified that his son would become a wandering monk instead of a king, tried to protect him from everything difficult. No sickness was allowed near him. No elderly people crossed his path. Death itself was hidden behind palace walls. Siddhartha lived surrounded by beauty, pleasure, and carefully curated perfection. Sound familiar? We do this too, don't we? We scroll past the painful posts. We avoid difficult conversations. We keep ourselves so busy that we never have to sit with what's actually brewing inside. We build our own palace walls, thinking if we just arrange things perfectly enough, anxiety won't find us there. But here's what happened to Siddhartha. One day, curiosity won. He left the palace and encountered what Buddhist teachings call the four sights: a sick person, an elderly person, a corpse, and finally, a wandering monk with a peaceful face. In a single afternoon, his carefully constructed reality shattered. He saw that suffering exists. He couldn't unsee it. And more than that, he realized something that changed the trajectory of his entire life. Avoiding suffering doesn't make it disappear. It just makes you more fragile when it inevitably arrives. This is the first noble truth, and it's not pessimistic, it's compassionate. Dukkha exists. Anxiety, stress, dissatisfaction, that gnawing sense that something's not quite right. These are part of being human. You're not broken because you feel them. You're awake. Siddhartha left everything: the palace, the comfort, the denial, and went searching for a way through. He tried extreme self-denial, nearly starving himself to death. That didn't work. He tried intense meditation practices that left him exhausted. That didn't work either. And then, sitting under a tree, he stopped trying to fight reality and instead chose to observe it with extraordinary clarity. What he discovered became the second noble truth. Anxiety has a cause. It's not random, it's not punishment, and it's not a character flaw. It arises from tanha. This word means craving, but it's deeper than wanting things. It's the constant need for life to be different than it is right now. It's the mental argument with reality that never stops. This shouldn't be happening. I should be further along. If only things were different, then I'd be okay. That resistance, that pushing and pulling against what is, that's where so much of our suffering gets amplified. But here's where it gets beautiful. The third noble truth says, this suffering can be transformed. Not someday, not in another life, not after you become perfect, but here, in this very existence, with this very mind. When you stop adding that second layer of struggle, when you stop fighting the waves and learn to move with them, Instead, something loosens. Space appears. Breath returns. And the fourth noble truth, it's the path itself, the practices we'll explore together over these next 3 hours. Ways of being present, of observing your mind, of returning to your body, of releasing the shoulds that strangle your peace. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you are beneath all the noise. When Siddhartha finally stood up from under that tree, he wasn't someone who never felt discomfort again. He got tired. He experienced physical pain. He faced criticism and betrayal. But his relationship to all of it had fundamentally changed. He was no longer at war with his own experience. And that is what's possible for you too. This is medicine for the mind, not magic for the ego. Buddhism won't hand you a life free from challenges. It won't eliminate every uncomfortable feeling. What it will do is teach you how to stop making everything worse by resisting, avoiding, or believing every catastrophic thought that drifts through your awareness. Over the next 3 hours, we're going to walk this path together, not as a lecture, but as an exploration, not as a fix, but as a homecoming. You'll hear stories that mirror your own struggles. You'll encounter practices so simple they might seem too easy to work, until you try them and feel something shift. You'll discover that the peace you've been searching for everywhere else has been waiting patiently inside you all along. This isn't a one-time miracle cure. You won't finish these 3 hours and never feel anxious again. What you will have is a toolkit, a compass, a way of seeing that makes the next moment of anxiety less overwhelming than the last. And then the next one, easier, still. And gradually, you'll realize you're living differently. You're breathing more deeply. You're reacting less quickly. You're present more often. The same life circumstances might still be there, but you're meeting them from a different place, a place of clarity instead of chaos, of wisdom instead of worry. This is what Buddhism actually offers. Not the elimination of the human experience, but the transformation of your relationship to it. Not a promise that you'll never feel anxiety, but a guarantee that anxiety doesn't have to run your life anymore. And that, my friend, is worth every moment of this journey. So take a breath. Settle a little deeper into wherever you're listening from. Let your body soften, even just a fraction. Because what comes next might just change everything. There's a disease spreading through modern life, and most of us don't even realize we're infected. It doesn't show up on medical tests. No doctor will diagnose it, but you feel it every single day, this constant internal pressure to move faster, do more, keep up, never stop. The disease of hurry. And here's what nobody tells you. This rush, this relentless velocity you've normalized, is not just exhausting you. It's feeding your anxiety like oxygen feeds fire. We live in a culture that profits from your exhaustion. Every app is designed to keep you scrolling, every notification engineered to fragment your attention, every product promising to save you time, so you can fill that time with more tasks, more productivity, more doing. The algorithm knows exactly how to keep you hooked, distracted, perpetually unsatisfied. You're not imagining it. The speed has been weaponized. And your nervous system is paying the price. Think about your morning. You probably woke to an alarm that jolted you from sleep, immediately reached for your phone before your eyes fully opened, scrolled through messages and news while still in bed, then rushed through a shower, grabbed whatever food was quickest, checked email while drinking coffee, mentally rehearsing your day while brushing your teeth. And you were already tired before you even left the house. This is what I mean by the disease of hurry. You're racing before the race even begins. Because here's what's happening inside you when you rush. Your body cannot tell the difference between running from a tiger and running to a meeting. Biologically, urgency is urgency. Threat is threat. So when you live in constant hurry, checking your phone while eating breakfast, thinking about tonight's dinner while you're still at lunch, rehearsing tomorrow's presentation while trying to fall asleep, your nervous system stays locked in survival mode. Your heart rate elevates. Cortisol floods your bloodstream. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your muscles tense. Your digestion slows down because your body thinks you need all available energy for running or fighting. And your mind, sensing danger, starts scanning for threats that aren't there. This is how chronic anxiety takes root. Not because something terrible is happening, but because you've taught your body that everything is urgent, everything matters, everything needs to be done right now. The sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response, was designed for short bursts. See danger, respond, return to baseline. But when you're rushing from the moment you wake until you collapse at night, that system never gets to reset. You're running on stress hormones all day long, and your body starts to believe this is normal. This becomes your baseline. No wonder you're exhausted. No wonder you can't relax even when you have time to rest. Your nervous system has forgotten what safety feels like. The Buddha said something 2,500 years ago that cuts right through this madness. The trouble is, you think you have time. At first, this sounds paradoxical, doesn't it? We rush because we think we don't have time. But look deeper. We rush because we believe there will be a moment, someday, later, eventually, when we can finally rest, finally be present, finally feel okay. We're constantly trading this moment for an imaginary future moment when things will be better, calmer, more complete. After this project is done, then I'll relax. After I get that promotion, then I'll slow down. After the kids are older, after I have more money, after everything falls into place, then I'll finally be able to breathe. But that moment never arrives, because you keep pushing it forward. The goalpost keeps moving, and you keep running toward a finish line that doesn't exist. Let me share a story that changed how I understand this. There was a Zen monk in Japan who lived near a busy train station in Tokyo, one of the most chaotic intersections of humanity you can imagine. Thousands of people rushing in every direction, announcements blaring, the roar of trains arriving and departing every few minutes, the constant surge of urgency. Salary workers rushing to not be late, tourists frantically consulting maps, everyone moving as if their life depended on speed. A Western journalist visited this monk and asked him, "How can you possibly meditate here? How can you find peace in the middle of all this chaos? Don't you want to live somewhere quieter?" The monk smiled. He said, "I don't try to find peace despite the chaos. I simply walk slowly." The journalist looked confused. "Slowly? That's the secret?" And then the monk demonstrated. While everyone around him rushed past, briefcases swinging, faces tight with stress, bodies leaning forward as if perpetually late, eyes glued to phones, this monk walked through the station with such deliberate slowness that people parted around him like water around a stone. Each step conscious, grounded, complete before the next one began. Each breath intentional, full, unhurried. Not because he had nowhere to be, but because he understood something most of us have forgotten. Speed is a choice, and so is presence. The journalist watched, mesmerized. He noticed something remarkable. While everyone else looked stressed, tight, disconnected, the monk's face was completely relaxed. His shoulders were soft. His breathing was visible, steady, deep. And there was something in his eyes, a clarity, an aliveness that everyone rushing past him had lost somewhere along the way. That monk was practicing something Buddhism calls samatha, the art of calming the mind. Not by escaping to a quiet mountaintop, but by choosing stillness within movement. By refusing to let the world's velocity become his velocity. And here's what's beautiful. When you stop running, even for a moment, your mind begins to settle naturally. Like muddy water left undisturbed, clarity returns on its own. You don't have to fight for calm. You don't have to manufacture peace through force of will. You just have to stop fighting against this moment. But our culture tells you the opposite, doesn't it? It tells you that slowing down is laziness. That rest is something you earn only after you've exhausted yourself. That presence is a luxury you can't afford when there's so much to do. That if you're not busy, you're not valuable. And so you keep running through breakfast, through conversations, through your own life, always arriving, but never really there. I want you to understand something crucial. This isn't your fault. You didn't create this culture of speed. You were born into it. You were trained for it from childhood. From the moment you entered school, you were taught that faster equals better, that efficiency equals worth, that your value is measured by your output. Gold stars for finishing first, praise for never stopping, admiration for those who sacrifice sleep, and sanity for productivity. No wonder you're exhausted. No wonder anxiety feels like a permanent resident in your chest. But here's the revolutionary truth Buddhism offers. Slowness is not weakness. Slowness is power. When you choose to slow down, you're not being lazy or unproductive or falling behind. You're reclaiming your nervous system from a culture that wants it dysregulated, wants you too scattered to question, too tired to resist. You're telling your body, we are safe. There is no tiger chasing us. This moment, right here, is enough. And your body listens. It begins to exhale. Shoulders drop. Jaw unclenches. Breathing deepens. Heart rate slows. The parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest mode, finally gets permission to come online. And in that softening, anxiety loses its grip, because anxiety needs urgency to survive. When you refuse to rush, you pull the oxygen away from the fire. This doesn't mean you stop being responsible or productive. It means you stop conflating speed with effectiveness. Because the truth is, when you slow down, when you bring full presence to one thing at a time, you actually become more capable, more creative, more clear. You're not scattering your energy across 17 half-done tasks. You're focusing it, concentrating it, making it matter. Think about the last time you rushed through a meal. Did you even taste it? Or was it just fuel, mechanically consumed while your mind was already 3 steps ahead? Or the last conversation you had while checking your phone, did you really hear what the other person was saying? Or that project you hurried through just to check it off your list, did you feel any satisfaction or just immediate pressure to move on to the next thing? This is what hurry steals from you. Not time, but life itself. The texture of it, the taste of it, the feeling of actually being here for your own existence. The practice begins with awareness. Start noticing when you're rushing. Not to judge yourself, but simply to see it. Feel your body leaning forward, always ahead of itself. Notice your breath getting shallow, trapped high in your chest. Observe your mind already 3 steps ahead of where your feet actually are. And in that noticing, you create a gap, a tiny space between the habit and your response to it. The habit says, rush. But in the gap, you have a choice. You can keep running, or you can take one breath and slow down. Just one breath. That's all it takes to begin reclaiming your time, reclaiming your nervous system, reclaiming your life from the tyranny of speed. The monk in Tokyo Station understood this. He didn't need the world to slow down for him to find peace. He didn't wait for perfect conditions or a quieter life. He simply refused to let the world's panic become his panic. And you can do this too. Right where you are, right in the middle of your complicated, full, demanding life. You can choose slowness. And in doing so, you choose sanity. You choose presence. You choose yourself. Now let's talk about what it actually means to be present, because this is where everything shifts. The present moment. You've heard this phrase 1,000 times, haven't you? It's become almost cliché in wellness circles. Be here now, they say, as if it's obvious, as if you're not already here. But the truth is, most of us spend almost no time in the actual present. Your body is here, yes, sitting, or standing, or lying down, physically occupying this space. But where is your mind? It's replaying yesterday's conversation, analyzing what you should have said differently. It's rehearsing tomorrow's meeting, scripting responses to questions that haven't been asked yet. It's planning next week, next month, 5 years from now, constructing elaborate scenarios about a future that may never arrive. Or it's lost in fantasy, in worry, in stories about who you should be and what you should have done. Meanwhile, this moment, the only moment you actually have, the only moment that's real, is passing you by completely unnoticed. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Zen master who brought mindfulness to the West, used to teach his students about presence through something beautifully simple, eating an orange. He would sit in front of a group, holding a single orange in his hands. Not doing anything with it at first, just holding it, feeling its weight, its texture. He'd turn it slowly, examining its skin, the tiny dimples and variations in color. Then he'd bring it close to his face and smell it, really breathing in that bright citrus scent. His students would watch, some confused, some impatient, wondering when the lesson would begin. But the lesson had already begun. Then he'd peel it, so slowly that it felt almost ceremonial, noticing the spray of oils as his thumbnail pierced the skin, feeling the way the rind released from the fruit, hearing the soft tearing sound. He'd separate each segment carefully, arranging them like petals. And when he finally ate it, he'd take one segment at a time chewing slowly, tasting completely, the sweetness, the slight tartness, the burst of juice. It would take him 15 minutes to eat a single orange. His students would watch, initially thinking this was some kind of endurance test. Why was he making such a ceremony out of eating an orange? They had things to do, places to be. But then he'd explain, and everything would shift. When you eat an orange while thinking about your bills, he'd say, "You're not really eating the orange. You're eating your bills. You're consuming worry with a side of citrus. When you eat while planning tomorrow, scrolling through your phone, watching television, you're not tasting anything. You're just refueling, mechanical, disconnected. But when you eat an orange with your full attention, something sacred happens. You're actually alive. You're actually here. You're experiencing the miracle of taste, of nourishment, of this fruit that grew on a tree somewhere under sunlight and rain, traveled across distance to reach you, and is now becoming part of your body. That's not small. That's life itself, fully lived. This is what the present moment means. Not some mystical state you have to achieve through years of meditation. Not some impossible standard of never having a wandering thought. Just this, being where you are, doing what you're doing, without your mind splitting off into 100 other directions. Buddhism calls this sati, often translated as mindfulness, but the word actually means something closer to remembering. Remembering to come back. Remembering that life is happening right now, not in the story you're telling yourself about the past or the future. Your mind will wander. That's not a problem. That's not failure. The human mind is designed to wander. It's how we plan, imagine, learn from the past, prepare for the future. The practice isn't achieving some perfect state of constant presence. That's impossible. And that's not even the point. The practice is noticing when you've drifted, and gently, without judgment, bringing yourself back. Again and again and again. That's the whole practice. Think of it like training a puppy. The puppy wanders off, and you don't scold it or shame it. You just gently guide it back, over and over, and eventually the puppy learns. Your mind is the same way. It needs patient, compassionate training, not harsh criticism. And here's why this matters so much for anxiety. Anxiety cannot exist in the present moment. Really think about this. Anxiety is always about something that hasn't happened yet or something that already happened. What if I fail this presentation? What if they don't like me? What if I lose my job, my health, my security? Or it's replaying past mistakes, past humiliations, building evidence for why you should be worried right now. But if you bring your full attention to this exact moment, Not the next breath, not the last one, but this one right here. Where is the anxiety? In this moment, are you breathing? Yes. In this moment, are you safe? Most likely, yes. In this moment, is anything terrible actually happening? Usually the answer is no. The present moment is almost always okay. It's your thoughts about the future or the past that create suffering. Let's do something together right now. Not later, not after you finish listening to this section. Right now. Take a breath in through your nose, filling your lungs completely. And let it out slowly through your mouth. Another breath in, deep and full. And release, letting everything soften. One more. Breathe in deeply, feeling your chest and belly expand. And let it go slowly, releasing any tension you're holding. Now take 2 more breaths at your own pace, your own rhythm. Notice, in those 5 breaths, where was your anxiety? Where was your worry about tomorrow or regret about yesterday? When you brought your full attention to just breathing, just being here, the mental noise probably quieted, even if only for a moment. That's the power of presence. That's what's available to you, always, in any moment you choose to return. This isn't about becoming some enlightened being who never worries. It's about having a refuge you can return to when the mind starts spiraling, when anxiety begins building its catastrophic scenarios. Your breath has been with you since the moment you were born, and it will be with you until your last moment. It's the most faithful companion you have. And when you anchor your attention there, even briefly, you step out of the time machine of anxiety and land back in the only time that's real. Now, why could this alone transform everything? Because anxiety feeds on your absence. Every moment you spend lost in thought, ruminating on what might happen or what did happen, your anxiety grows stronger. But every moment you spend actually present, anxiety loses fuel. It's like a fire that needs your attention, your worry, your mental participation to keep burning. When you stop feeding it with catastrophic thinking and future tripping, it begins to die down naturally. You don't have to fight it. You don't have to positive think your way out of it. You don't have to be strong or perfect or somehow transcendent. You just have to be here. Fully, completely here. But I know what you're thinking right about now. This sounds beautiful, but I have a demanding job, kids who need me, bills that won't pay themselves, responsibilities that don't pause just because I want to be present. I don't have time for 15-minute orange meditations or hours of sitting in silence. And you're absolutely right. Which is why this final piece is so important. You don't need to quit your job or move to the mountains or become a monk. You don't need to overhaul your entire life or abandon your responsibilities. Breaking the speed addiction, learning to live with presence instead of pressure, starts with something so small it might seem insignificant. Sacred pauses. These are tiny moments of intentional slowness, planted throughout your day like seeds in soil. Small acts of presence that interrupt the automation of rushing. Before you eat, pause for 3 seconds. Look at your food. Notice its colors and textures. Take one conscious breath. Before you open the door to your home, pause. Let work fall away. Let your shoulders drop. Cross the threshold with awareness. Before you speak, especially when you feel reactive or defensive, pause. Feel the words forming. Choose them consciously rather than reacting from habit. These pauses are rebellion. Small, quiet acts of defiance against a culture that wants you running on empty, too scattered to notice what's been stolen from you. There's a story about a corporate executive, let's call her Sarah, who discovered this practice during one of the hardest periods of her life. She was working 80-hour weeks at a tech company, managing a team of 30 people, barely sleeping, surviving on coffee and adrenaline. Anxiety was her constant companion. Her jaw ached from clenching. Her stomach was always tight. She couldn't remember the last time she'd taken a full breath. One evening, after another brutal 14-hour day, she sat in her car in the parking garage and realized something that stopped her cold. She couldn't remember the drive to work that morning. Couldn't remember eating lunch, though her desk had an empty container on it. Couldn't remember a single conversation she'd had that day with any real presence. She was living, but she wasn't there for it. She was like a ghost in her own life, moving through the motions while completely absent from the experience. That night, sitting in her car, something cracked, open. She started crying, not the pretty kind of crying, but the kind that shakes your whole body, the kind that's been building for months and finally breaks through. And in that breaking, she made a deal with herself. Every day, before getting out of her car, whether arriving at work or coming home, she would sit for exactly 1 minute. Not checking her phone, not planning her next move, not rehearsing conversations. Just sitting, breathing, noticing where she was, how she felt, what she needed. 1 minute. 60 seconds. She said it felt ridiculous at first, even indulgent. The first few days, her mind screamed at her to hurry up, get moving, stop being lazy. But she stayed with it. And within 2 weeks, something shifted. That 1 minute of pause began changing the other 1,339 minutes of her day. She started noticing when she was rushing unnecessarily, when urgency was just habit rather than reality. She began actually hearing her children when they spoke to her after work. She found herself taking full breaths throughout the day. Her anxiety didn't disappear. She still had hard days, overwhelming moments. But its grip loosened because she'd created a practice of returning to herself, of coming back to presence again and again. That's what sacred pauses do. They interrupt the automation, the mindless rushing from one thing to the next, without ever actually arriving anywhere. They remind you that you're not a machine programmed for productivity. You're a human being, and being requires presence. Start with one. Choose one transition in your day: waking up, starting work, coming home, eating a meal, going to bed, and build in a 5-second pause. Just 5 seconds of being, breathing, arriving where you are. It won't feel like much. Your mind will probably resist, call it silly, tell you there are more important things to do. But these small rebellions accumulate. They create cracks in the armor of speed, letting light in. And through those cracks, your life starts seeping back in, the life you've been too busy to notice, the moments you've been too rushed to experience. Before we move forward, let's check in together. This is itself a sacred pause. How do you feel right now, in this moment? Not how you felt when you started listening, not how you think you'll feel later. Right now. Is your breathing easier than when you began? Has your body softened even slightly? Are your thoughts moving a little slower? Or maybe nothing has changed yet, and that's okay too. Don't judge what you find. Just notice. Because this noticing, this gentle awareness of your present moment experience, this is the practice itself. You're doing it right now. You're here. And that is enough. We've walked through the first gate together, the gate of reclaiming time. Not by finding more hours in the day, but by actually inhabiting the hours you have. By choosing slowness when the world demands speed. By returning to presence when your mind wanders into past or future. By planting small moments of pause in the soil of your ordinary days. This is how you begin to shift your relationship with anxiety. Not by conquering it through force, but by removing the conditions that let it thrive. Hurry feeds anxiety. Absence feeds anxiety. Constant doing without any space for simply being feeds anxiety. So you slow down. You come back to now. You pause. You breathe. And gradually, breath by breath, moment by moment, You remember what it feels like to be alive, not just productive, not just busy, not just surviving, but genuinely, fully alive. That remembering is the medicine, and you've already begun taking it. There's something you need to understand about your mind, something that might initially feel unsettling, but ultimately becomes the most liberating truth you'll ever encounter. Your mind is not your master. Right now, as you listen to these words, your mind is probably doing what it always does, commenting, analyzing, agreeing, or disagreeing, drifting to something you need to do later, replaying something from earlier today. It's like a radio that never turns off, a constant stream of thoughts, judgments, stories, worries, and plans. And somewhere along the way, you learn to believe that this voice in your head is you. But it's not. The Buddha taught something 2,500 years ago that modern neuroscience is only now confirming. The untrained mind is like a drunken monkey. No, really, that's the actual teaching. A drunken monkey that's been stung by a bee, leaping wildly from branch to branch, never settling, always agitated, constantly seeking the next thing to grab onto. This monkey mind jumps from thought to thought, without any conscious direction from you. One moment you're thinking about what to make for dinner, the next moment you're remembering something embarrassing you said in 3rd grade. Then suddenly you're catastrophizing about your job security, then wondering if you left the stove on, then judging yourself for not being more present, then worrying about that judgment, then thinking about thinking. And here's what makes it so exhausting. You believe all of it. Every thought that appears in your awareness, you take as truth. Every worry, every judgment, every catastrophic prediction, you treat them as facts rather than what they actually are, which is mental events, temporary appearances in consciousness that have no more inherent reality than clouds in the sky. This is where so much of your anxiety comes from. Not from what's actually happening in your life, but from believing the stories your untrained mind is constantly generating. Your mind is like an overprotective parent who sees danger everywhere, a director constantly creating disaster movies in your imagination, a lawyer building cases against you based on evidence that doesn't exist yet. Let me share a story that illustrates this beautifully. A classic Zen teaching that has survived centuries because it cuts so directly to the truth. 2 monks were walking together on a journey, an older monk and a younger one. They came to a river crossing where the water was high and the current strong. Standing at the bank was a young woman in expensive silk robes, clearly distressed because she couldn't cross without ruining her clothes and possibly being swept away by the current. The older monk, without saying a word, picked her up, carried her across the river on his back, set her down gently on the other side, bowed to her, and continued walking. The younger monk was shocked, completely speechless. In their tradition, monks were not supposed to touch women, especially not young, beautiful women. But he said nothing, just followed his teacher in silence, his mind churning. They walked for hours. Mile after mile, the younger monk's mind created an entire drama around those 2 minutes at the river. How could his teacher break the rules like that? What would the other monks say if they found out? Had his teacher lost his way? Was this a test of the young monk's loyalty? Should he report this? Was he complicit in the transgression just by witnessing it? The thoughts spun and spun, each one leading to another, building into a storm of judgment and confusion and righteousness and doubt. Finally, after hours of this internal torment, unable to contain himself any longer, the young monk burst out, "How could you carry that woman? You know we're not supposed to touch women. You've broken our vows. I can't believe you did that." The older monk looked at him with gentle, amused eyes and said, "I put her down hours ago at the river. Why are you still carrying her?" This story cuts to the heart of how the mind works, how suffering is created not by events themselves, but by what we do with them in our thoughts. The event itself, carrying the woman across the river, took maybe 2 minutes, maybe even less. But the younger monk carried the story about that event, the judgment about it, the anxiety about it, the entire mental drama, for hours. He tortured himself not with reality, but with his thoughts about reality. And here's what makes this teaching so powerful. The older monk wasn't less aware or less thoughtful. He simply understood something the younger monk hadn't learned yet. He knew that thoughts are not commands, that rules serve compassion rather than replace it, and that every moment offers a choice: carry the story or put it down. This is what your mind does all day long, every single day. It picks things up, worries, judgments, resentments, fears, old conversations, anticipated disasters, and carries them for hours, days, sometimes years, long after the actual moment has passed. And you, like the young monk, don't realize you have the power to put them down. The Buddha said in the Dhammapada, one of the oldest and most beloved Buddhist texts, "We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world." This isn't just beautiful poetry. It's pointing to something profound about how suffering is created and how freedom is found. Your thoughts literally construct your experience of reality. Two people can be in the exact same situation, sitting in traffic, for example, and one is peaceful, while the other is consumed with rage. Why? Not because of the traffic itself, not because one has a better car or more time, but because of their thoughts about the traffic. One person thinks, "This is terrible. I'm going to be late. Everyone will judge me. This always happens to me. Why is life so unfair? I should have left earlier. Why are these people such terrible drivers? The other thinks, well, here we are. Nothing I can do about it right now. Might as well take some breaths and listen to music. Maybe I'll arrive a few minutes late, and that's okay. Same traffic, same delay, completely different experience. This is why understanding the nature of thought is so crucial for freeing yourself from anxiety. Because once you see, really see, that your thoughts are not facts, that they're just mental events, just appearances in consciousness, everything changes. Thoughts are like visitors knocking on your door. You don't have to invite them in for dinner. You don't have to let them move in and redecorate your house. You don't have to believe everything they say or follow every suggestion they make. You can acknowledge them. Oh, there's a worried thought. There's a judgment. There's a catastrophic prediction. And let them move on without building your whole day around them. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps and went on to develop logotherapy, said something that echoes this Buddhist wisdom perfectly. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That space, that tiny gap between a thought appearing and you believing it, between a worry arising and you getting swept away by it, between an impulse and an action, that's where your freedom lives. And the beautiful thing, you can learn to widen that space. You can train your mind to pause, to observe, to choose, rather than automatically react. This is what we're going to explore now, how to observe your mind without being controlled by it. Buddhism calls this vipassana, which translates to clear seeing or insight. It's the practice of watching your thoughts without becoming them, observing your mind without being swept away by every mental current that flows through. Imagine your mind is the sky. Throughout the day, all kinds of weather passes through: clouds, storms, sunshine, fog, rain, snow, wind. Sometimes the weather is gentle and pleasant, warm sunlight and soft breezes. Sometimes it's harsh and difficult, dark thunderstorms and cold winds. But here's what never changes: the sky itself. The sky doesn't fight the clouds. It doesn't say, "I shouldn't have clouds today. This is terrible. I need to make the clouds go away. I should be better at keeping clouds out." It simply holds them, allows them, provides space for them to move through. And no matter how dark the storm gets, no matter how violent the weather becomes, the sky is never actually damaged by it. When the storm passes, the sky is still there, unchanged, vast, open. You are like that sky. Your thoughts, your emotions, your worries and fears and joys and sorrows. These are the weather. They come, they intensify, they move through, they pass. But you, the awareness that observes all of this, the consciousness in which all experience appears, you remain. This is one of the most revolutionary insights in all of Buddhism. You are not your thoughts. You are the space in which thoughts appear. You are not the weather. You are the sky. When you can rest in that understanding, even for a moment, anxiety loses its absolute power over you. Because you realize, oh, this is just weather. This is just a thought storm passing through. It feels intense right now. It feels so real. But it's not who I am. It's not permanent. And it won't last forever. Let me give you a practical tool you can use right now, today, the very next time anxiety starts building in your mind and body. When you notice a thought that's creating distress, pause and ask yourself this simple but powerful question: is this a fact, or is this a story my mind is telling? Let's try it with a real example, one that many people experience. Imagine you have a job interview tomorrow. Your mind starts spinning the moment you think about it. I'm going to mess this up. I always mess these things up. I never know what to say. They're going to ask me questions I can't answer. They're going to see right through me. They'll know I'm not really qualified. I'm going to be so nervous. I'll stumble over my words. My hands will shake. They're going to judge me harshly. I won't get the job. I'll never get a good job. I'm going to end up broke and alone. That's the catastrophe spiral. And if you've ever experienced anxiety, you know exactly what I'm talking about. One thought leads to another, each one more dire than the last, until you're not just nervous about an interview. You're convinced your entire future is doomed. Your life is falling apart. Everything you've feared is about to come true. But now, pause. Take a breath. Ask the question, is this a fact or is this a story? Fact, you have an interview tomorrow. Story, you're going to mess it up. Fact, you feel nervous right now. Story, being nervous means you'll fail. Fact, you don't know what questions they'll ask. Story, you won't be able to answer them. Fact, this is an important opportunity. Story, your entire future depends on this one interview. Do you see the difference? Facts are things that are actually verifiably true in this moment. Stories are narratives your mind creates about what might happen, usually based on fear, past experiences that may not be relevant anymore, or worst-case scenarios that have a very low probability of actually occurring. And here's the thing, your mind is really, really good at making stories feel like facts. It's so convincing, so authoritative in its delivery that you don't even question it. The thought, "I'm going to fail," appears with such certainty, and immediately your body responds, as if failure has already happened. Heart racing, palms sweating, stomach churning, muscles tensing. But when you learn to distinguish between facts and stories, you create space. You don't have to believe every thought just because it showed up in your mind with a convincing tone. You can acknowledge the thought, "Okay, my mind is telling me a failure story right now," without treating it as prophecy. I want to share a story about a student I once knew who discovered this for herself in a profound way. Her name was Maria, and she'd struggled with anxiety her entire adult life, for as long as she could remember. She described it as a constant companion, always there in the background, always loud, always telling her she wasn't good enough, that something terrible was about to happen, that she needed to be vigilant and worried, or everything would fall apart. She came to meditation practice desperately hoping it would make the anxiety go away completely. She wanted a cure, a fix, an erasure of this part of herself she'd been fighting for decades. And at first, she was frustrated because the anxiety didn't disappear. In fact, when she started paying attention to her mind through meditation, she became more aware of just how many anxious thoughts she was having, how constant the stream of worry really was. "It's worse now," she said. "Now I can't even distract myself from it." But then something shifted, something subtle at first, but ultimately transformative. During one practice session, she was sitting there in meditation, and the familiar anxiety arose, that tight feeling in her chest, that racing mind, that voice saying, "Something's wrong. Something's wrong. You're not safe. You need to do something." But this time, instead of becoming the anxiety, instead of letting it take over completely and define her entire experience, she noticed herself having a thought. She heard herself think, "I'm so anxious." And then she realized, wait. If I can observe the thought, "I'm anxious," if I can hear that voice saying, "I'm anxious," then who's doing the observing? Who's listening to that voice? In that moment, she discovered what Buddhists have been teaching for millennia. There's a part of you that can watch the anxiety without being consumed by it. You can feel anxious and simultaneously be aware that you're feeling anxious. And that awareness, that observer, that witnessing presence is separate from the anxiety itself. She described it like this, and I'll never forget her words. It was like I'd been drowning in the ocean my whole life, convinced that I was the waves, that I was the water itself. And suddenly I realized I could also be standing on the shore, watching the waves crash and recede. The waves were still there, still intense, still powerful, but I wasn't only in them anymore, being tossed around. Part of me was safe on land, just observing, just witnessing. That's vipassana. That's clear seeing. And it's available to you right now, in this very moment. One of the most powerful practices for developing this skill is something called labeling or noting. It's beautifully simple, almost too simple to seem effective, but it works. When you notice your mind doing something, you just quietly, gently name it. Thinking. Worrying. Planning. Judging. Remembering. You're not trying to stop the thoughts. That's impossible, and it only creates more tension, more inner conflict. You're just acknowledging them, naming them, creating a tiny bit of space between you and the mental activity. Like a naturalist observing birds. Oh, there's a sparrow, there's a cardinal, there's a crow. You're simply noting what's present without becoming it. Try it right now. Whatever thought is moving through your mind at this moment, just notice it and silently label it. Listening, wondering, doubting, analyzing. Feel how that creates distance. You're not suppressing anything, not pushing anything away, not saying thoughts are bad or wrong. You're just observing the way you might watch clouds drift by or leaves float down a stream, acknowledging what's there without grasping at it or fighting against it. This practice works because it engages a different part of your brain, the observing, witnessing, metacognitive part, rather than the reactive, emotional part. When you label worrying, you're not in the worry anymore. You're watching it from a slight distance, which automatically creates some separation, some breathing room. And in that separation, something miraculous happens. The thought loses some of its charge, some of its grip on you. It's still there, yes, but it's no longer the only thing in your awareness, no longer the totalizing reality it felt like before. It becomes one event among many, one cloud in a vast sky, rather than the entire universe of your experience. This is how you create distance without suppression, space without resistance. You're not saying, I shouldn't think this way, these thoughts are bad, I'm a bad person for having these thoughts, I need to get rid of them immediately. That approach just creates more inner conflict, more tension, more suffering, more shame. Instead, you're saying, oh, there's a thought. There's worry appearing in my awareness. There's anxiety moving through like weather. I see you. I acknowledge you. and I don't have to become you or be controlled by you. It's the difference between being caught in a rainstorm, getting completely soaked and battered, and watching rain through a window while sitting in a warm, dry room. Both involve rain, both involve witnessing the same weather, but your relationship to it is completely different. The sky holds all weather without being damaged by any of it. And you can learn to do the same with your thoughts and emotions. Now let's talk about what to do when the really difficult thoughts come. The fear thoughts, the anxiety thoughts, the ones that feel so real and so urgent that you can't imagine not believing them, not responding to them immediately. Because here's the truth. You're going to have fear thoughts. You're going to have moments of anxiety. That's part of being human, part of having a brain that's wired to protect you by constantly scanning for danger, anticipating problems, preparing for worst-case scenarios. The question isn't how to never have another anxious thought. The question is, what do you do when those thoughts appear? Most people meet anxiety with combat. They fight it, resist it, try to push it away, or talk themselves out of it. Don't be anxious. Stop worrying. Just think positive. You're being irrational. Get over it. You're fine. There's nothing to worry about. But have you noticed that fighting anxiety usually makes it stronger? That resistance feeds it, gives it more energy, more importance. Buddhism offers a completely different approach. Meet anxiety with curiosity, not combat. When a fear thought arises, instead of immediately going to war with it, get curious about it. There's that worried voice again. What's it saying today? What does it think is going to happen? How does it feel in my body when this thought appears? Where do I feel it? Chest, stomach, throat. This might sound strange at first. Why would you want to get curious about something that feels so uncomfortable, so threatening? But curiosity does something remarkable to your nervous system and your mind. It shifts you from reactive mode to responsive mode. It engages your thinking brain, your prefrontal cortex, rather than just your emotional, limbic brain. And it creates that crucial space we've been talking about, the space where freedom lives, where choice becomes possible. There's a teaching in Buddhism called the 2 arrows from the Salatha Sutta that explains this perfectly and has become one of the most practical tools for understanding suffering. The Buddha said that when you experience pain, it's like being hit by an arrow. That's the first arrow, the actual event, the actual sensation, the thing that's genuinely happening right now. Maybe it's a racing heart. Maybe it's a difficult emotion. Maybe it's an uncomfortable situation. That first arrow hurts, and that pain is real. But then immediately, almost instantaneously, we shoot ourselves with a second arrow. This second arrow is all our thoughts about the first arrow, our resistance to it, our judgment of it, our story about what it means, our anxiety about how long it will last, our fear that we can't handle it, our shame about feeling it, our anger that it's happening, our despair that it will never end. The first arrow hurts. That's undeniable. That's part of life. But the second arrow, the one we shoot at ourselves with our thoughts and reactions, this is where most of our suffering actually comes from. Let me give you a concrete example. You're lying in bed at night, and your heart starts racing for no apparent reason. That's the first arrow, a physical sensation, maybe from too much coffee earlier, maybe from stress, maybe from nothing at all, just one of those things bodies do sometimes. But then your mind jumps in with the second arrow. Oh no, why is my heart racing? Is something wrong with me? Am I having a heart attack? Should I go to the hospital? This is terrible, I can't handle this. What if it gets worse? What if I die? I'm never going to fall asleep now. Tomorrow is going to be awful. I can't function without sleep. Now you're not just experiencing a racing heart, you're experiencing full panic about the racing heart, which makes your heart race even faster, which creates more panic, which creates more physical symptoms, which creates a full-blown anxiety spiral that can last for hours. The first arrow was just a sensation, uncomfortable, but not dangerous. The second arrow turned it into suffering, into a crisis, into evidence that something is terribly wrong. Buddhism isn't asking you to not feel the first arrow. Pain, discomfort, fear, difficult emotions, these are all part of life and part of being human. But it is showing you, with great compassion, that the second arrow is optional. You don't have to add the story. You don't have to add the catastrophizing, the judgment, the resistance, the this shouldn't be happening. You can just be with what is, just feel the sensation or emotion, without making it worse, with your thoughts about it. This is what it means to not fight the thoughts. Watch them instead. When fear thoughts come, you don't have to engage with them, argue with them, prove them wrong, or push them away with force. They're just thoughts, just mental weather. They want attention, not obedience. Think of anxious thoughts like small children having a tantrum in a store. If you ignore them completely, pretending they're not there, they might escalate, scream louder, make a bigger scene. But if you drop everything and give them your complete attention, treating their drama as if it's real and urgent and must be addressed immediately, they learn that tantrums work, that this is an effective strategy. The middle way, the Buddhist approach, is to acknowledge them without getting pulled into their drama. I see you, fear thought. I hear you, worried mind. Thank you for trying to protect me. I know you think you're helping. But I'm okay right now in this moment, and I don't need to follow you down this catastrophic path. and then you breathe. Breathing is your anchor when the mental storm hits, when thoughts are swirling and threatening to pull you under. Not because breathing will magically make the thoughts disappear. It won't. But because it gives you something real to return to, something happening right now in this actual moment, rather than in the imaginary future your anxious thoughts are creating. When fear thoughts are swirling, try this. Don't try to stop them or suppress them or argue with them. Just let them be there in the background, like a television playing in another room, and bring your full attention to your breath. In through your nose, feeling the cool air. Out through your mouth, feeling the release. In, feeling your belly rise like a wave. Out, feeling your belly fall, letting everything soften. The thoughts will still be there, chattering away. Let them be. Just keep coming back to your breath, over and over, as many times as you need to, patiently, gently, without judgment. You're training your mind to know that thoughts are not commands that must be obeyed. They're just mental weather, and you can let them blow through while you stay anchored in something real, something present, something that's actually happening right now, rather than in some imagined catastrophic future that may never arrive. Take a moment now and notice, how does your mind feel? As you've been listening to these teachings, as you've been learning about the nature of thought, about observation without attachment, about the two arrows, about meeting anxiety with curiosity instead of combat, has something shifted? Maybe just slightly? Maybe your thoughts have a little more space around them. Maybe you're not taking them quite as seriously as you were 30 minutes ago. Maybe there's a sense that you're not completely at their mercy. This is what happens when you understand your mind from a Buddhist perspective, when you learn to work with it rather than against it. The thoughts don't necessarily disappear. Remember, we're not trying to stop the waves, not trying to achieve some impossible state of mental silence. But your relationship to them changes profoundly. They lose their absolute authority over you. They become less solid, less permanent, less overwhelming. You're learning to surf, not stop the waves. And surfing, staying balanced on the board while the waves move beneath you, riding them skillfully without being dragged under, this is a skill you develop gradually through practice, through falling and getting back up, through learning the rhythm of the ocean, through patience with yourself. Some days you'll stay balanced and ride the wave beautifully, feeling graceful and capable. Other days you'll get tumbled and tossed, swallowing water, struggling to find your footing. Both are part of the practice. Both teach you something valuable. The difference is that now you know you're not the waves. You're not the storm. You're not the anxious thoughts or the worried mind or the catastrophic predictions. You're the awareness that can watch it all, can choose how to respond, can find stability, even when the mind is churning, can remain present, even in the midst of mental chaos. This is the second gate, freeing your mind. Not by controlling every thought, not by achieving some impossible state of mental perfection or constant peace, but by understanding the nature of thought itself and learning to observe without being controlled, to witness without being swept away. The monkey is still there, jumping from branch to branch, chattering and gesticulating. But now you can watch the monkey instead of being the monkey. Now you can see the performance without believing you are the performer. And in that watching, in that space of awareness, in that gap between thought and belief, you discover something that's been there all along, a stillness that doesn't depend on what your mind is doing, a peace that exists beneath the noise, a freedom that was never actually lost, just temporarily forgotten beneath layers of identification and belief. You're remembering it now, right here, right now, as these words land in your awareness, as your breath moves in and out, as thoughts arise and pass. Your mind is not your master. You are not your thoughts. And freedom has been here all along, waiting patiently for you to recognize it. Your body has been trying to talk to you for a very long time. Maybe for years. Maybe for decades. And all this time, you've been so busy living in your head, thinking, planning, worrying, remembering, anticipating, that you haven't heard a single word it's been saying. Buddhism calls the human body a precious birth, a rare opportunity. Not because it's sacred or divine or should be worshipped, but because it's incredibly rare to be born human, to have this specific vehicle for practice, this particular instrument for awakening. Think about it. You could have been born as any form of life, or no life at all. But here you are, with this body, this nervous system, this capacity for awareness. And what have we done with this gift? Most of us treat our bodies like inconvenient vehicles that occasionally need fuel and maintenance, something to be managed or ignored until it breaks down completely. But your body is not just a vehicle. It's a messenger. Everything you haven't processed emotionally, everything you've pushed down or pushed away, or tried to think your way through, your body has been storing. Keeping a record, holding the truth you're not ready to face. That tightness in your shoulders, that's not random. That's the weight of responsibility you've been carrying without rest, the burden of trying to hold everything together alone. The clenching in your jaw, that's all the words you haven't said, all the screams you've swallowed, all the boundaries you haven't set. The knot in your stomach? That's anxiety that hasn't been acknowledged, fear that hasn't been felt, intuition you've been overriding with logic. Your body speaks in sensation before it speaks in words, before it speaks in symptoms, before it speaks in illness. And if you learn to listen to those early whispers, you can address what needs addressing before the body has to scream. There's a woman I'll call Sarah who discovered this in a way that changed her entire relationship with herself. She came to a yoga class, not for spiritual reasons, but because her doctor had suggested it for her chronic hip pain. She'd had this pain for years, dull, persistent, occasionally flaring into something sharper. She'd tried physical therapy, anti-inflammatory medications, ergonomic adjustments to her workspace. Nothing helped for long. During one class, in a deep hip-opening pose, something unexpected happened. As her hip began to release, she started crying. Not gentle tears, but full-body sobs that shook her completely. She had no idea why. She felt embarrassed, confused, but she couldn't stop. The teacher came over, placed a gentle hand on her back, and said, "It's okay. The body remembers what the mind forgets." Later, when Sarah had calmed down, memories started surfacing. Memories of her mother's death 10 years earlier. Memories she thought she'd dealt with because she'd gone to therapy, because she'd talked about it, because she'd intellectually processed the loss. But her body had been holding the grief all along, storing it in her hips, waiting for the day she'd finally be still enough to feel it. Over the following weeks, as she continued the practice, the hip pain gradually dissolved. Not because the stretching fixed a mechanical problem, but because she'd finally listened to what her body had been trying to tell her for a decade. This is what Buddhism has understood for over 2,000 years. The body is not separate from your emotional and mental life. It's all connected, all communicating, all part of one whole system. The practice of mindfulness of body, called Kayagata, Sati in Pali, is one of the Buddha's foundational teachings. It's not about achieving a perfect body or making your body do impressive things. It's about cultivating awareness of your physical experience as it actually is, moment by moment. Why does this matter so much, especially for anxiety? Because anxiety lives in the body first, mind second. Before you consciously register the thought, "I'm anxious," your body has already responded. Heart rate increases, breathing becomes shallow, muscles tense, digestion slows, hands get cold or sweaty. Your body is having an anxiety attack before your mind even knows what's happening. And modern life has trained you to ignore all of this. You sit at desks for hours without noticing your shoulders creeping up toward your ears. You stare at screens until your eyes burn and your neck aches, but you keep going. You eat lunch while reading emails, barely tasting your food. You hold your breath during stressful moments without realizing it. You override your body's signals: tired, hungry, need to move, need to rest, because there's too much to do, not enough time. Productivity matters more than sensation. You've become profoundly disconnected from yourself. And here's what Buddhism adds that might seem paradoxical at first. The body ages, decays, eventually dies. This isn't meant to be morbid or depressing. It's meant to be motivating. When you truly understand that this body won't last forever, that it's subject to impermanence, just like everything else, something shifts. You stop taking it for granted. You start listening more carefully to what it's telling you right now, today, while you still have the chance. The Buddha taught his students to contemplate the body's impermanence regularly, not to become detached or nihilistic, but to develop appreciation and urgency. This precious human birth, this opportunity to wake up, won't last forever. So pay attention now. Listen now. Listening doesn't mean worshipping your body or making it an idol. It means respecting the messenger, honoring the communication, taking seriously what your body is trying to tell you about your life, your stress levels, your unprocessed emotions, your need for rest or movement or nourishment or release. When your body says, "I'm tired," and you override it with caffeine and determination, you're not being strong. You're being cruel to the only vehicle you have for this lifetime. When your body says, "This hurts," and you numb it with distraction or substances or relentless busyness, you're not solving anything. You're just teaching your body that its messages don't matter, that it has to speak louder next time. But when you start listening, really listening, something beautiful happens. The body begins to trust you. It doesn't have to shout anymore. It can whisper, and you'll hear it. So how do you begin to listen after years of ignoring? You start with something gentle, something that doesn't require you to be flexible or fit or have any special skills. You start with simple awareness. Right now, wherever you are, let's do a friendly check-in with your body. This isn't a formal meditation with rules and right ways to do it. This is just you checking in with yourself, the way you might check in with a friend. Start at the top of your head. What do you notice there? Any tension? Any tightness? Any sensation at all? Don't try to change it. Just notice it. Move your awareness to your face, your jaw. Are you clenching? Most people are, and don't even realize it. Let your jaw soften if it wants to. Bring your attention to your shoulders. This is where so many of us hold the weight of the world. Are they up by your ears, tight and braced? Can you let them drop just a little? Just soften the grip. Notice your chest, your breathing. Is it shallow and high, or deep and full? No judgment, just curiosity. Your stomach, your belly. Any tightness there? Any butterflies or knots or heaviness? Your hands. Are you making fists? Can you let them unfold? Let your fingers relax. Your legs, your feet. Can you feel them? Are they touching the ground? Can you sense the earth supporting you? That's it. That simple scan, that simple noticing is the practice. You might be surprised by what you discover, places you didn't know were tense, sensations you've been ignoring for so long they've become background noise, areas of your body that feel almost numb because you've disconnected from them so completely. Buddhism recognizes 3 basic types of physical sensation: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. This is part of a practice called Vedananupasana, observing feelings or sensations as they arise. Pleasant sensations, warmth, softness, relaxation, comfort. These are easy to be with, easy to notice. But notice what your mind does with them. It wants to hold on to them, make them last forever, turn them into something permanent. Unpleasant sensations, tension, pain, discomfort, restlessness. These are harder to be with. Your mind wants to push them away immediately, fix them, make them stop. Neutral sensations, everything else, the vast majority of your bodily experience that's neither particularly pleasant nor unpleasant. Your mind tends to ignore these completely, not finding them interesting enough to pay attention to. But here's what's revolutionary. You can be aware of all 3 types without grasping at the pleasant, without pushing away the unpleasant, without ignoring the neutral. You can just notice. Just be with what is. There's a story about a businessman, let's call him James, who attended a silent meditation retreat, mostly because his wife insisted and he couldn't think of a good excuse. He spent his entire life in his head, analyzing, planning, strategizing, problem solving. His body was just the thing that carried his brain from meeting to meeting. He exercised for health, ate for fuel, slept when absolutely necessary. On the 3rd day of the retreat, during a walking meditation practice, the teacher said something simple: feel your feet on the earth. James had walked millions of steps in his life, but he'd never actually felt his feet on the earth. So he tried. He slowed way down, felt the heel of his right foot touch the ground, felt his weight shift forward, felt his toes pressing into the earth, felt his left foot lift and move forward. And suddenly, without warning, he started weeping. He felt, for the first time in decades, that he actually existed, that he was real, that he had a body, that he was connected to something solid and true, that he wasn't just a floating head full of thoughts and worries and endless mental noise. Later he described it as the most profound experience of his life, more significant than his wedding, more moving than the birth of his children, more real than any success or achievement. Because in that moment, he'd come home to himself. This is the power of simple attention. You don't need to fix anything. You don't need to be more flexible or stronger or healthier or different in any way. You just need to notice, to feel, to be present in your own physical experience. And when you do this, when you finally bring kind awareness to your body, after years of ignoring or criticizing or pushing it beyond its limits, the body responds. Tension that's been held for months or years begins to soften. Not because you forced it to, not because you tried really hard to relax, but because the body relaxes when it's finally heard, when it's finally met with gentleness instead of judgment or demand. It's like a child who's been crying for attention. Once you finally stop, kneel down, and really listen, the crying stops. Not because you fixed the problem or gave them what they wanted, but because they feel seen, heard, acknowledged. Your body is the same way. It doesn't need you to be perfect. It just needs you to pay attention. Now, let's talk about the simplest, most accessible practice in all of Buddhism, one that you've been doing since the moment you were born, one that will be with you until your last moment, one that's always available, no matter where you are or what's happening. Your breath. Not controlling it, not forcing it to be deep or slow or any particular way. Just befriending it, just noticing it. The Buddha taught breath awareness, called anapanasati, as one of the most fundamental practices for developing calm and insight. It's so simple that people often underestimate it. They think, that can't be enough. There must be something more complicated, something more advanced. But masters spend entire lifetimes with the breath and never exhaust its depths. Why is the breath so powerful? Because it's the bridge between your conscious and unconscious mind, between your voluntary and involuntary nervous system, between your body and your awareness. You can't control your heartbeat directly, but you can influence it through your breath. You can't tell your digestive system what to do, but breathing affects it. You can't command your anxiety to disappear, but you can shift your nervous system state through breathing. Your breath has been with you since birth. It will be with you until death. It's the most faithful companion you have, more reliable than any friend, any possession, any external circumstance. And it's always here. Always now. Always free. You don't need any equipment, any special location, any teacher present, any perfect conditions. Your breath is available in traffic, in meetings, in bed, at 3 a.m, in the middle of a panic attack, in moments of joy, in moments of grief. 3 conscious breaths can change your entire nervous system state. Not because breathing is magic, but because when you breathe slowly and intentionally, you send a direct signal to your vagus nerve, the main nerve of your parasympathetic nervous system, that says, "We're safe, we can rest, there's no emergency right now." Let's try it together right now. Not later, not when you have more time, but now. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, pause for just 3 breaths. First breath. Breathe in slowly through your nose, feeling the air move into your lungs, feeling your belly gently expand. And breathe out through your mouth, letting everything soften, letting the breath carry away any tension you're holding. Second breath, in through your nose again, deeper this time if that feels comfortable, filling your lungs completely. And out through your mouth, slow and steady, like you're gently blowing out a candle. Third breath, one more time, breathing in all the way, feeling yourself expand with the inhale. And releasing fully, letting the exhale be just a bit longer than the inhale, letting your body sink into whatever's supporting it. Notice how you feel now compared to 3 breaths ago. Maybe just slightly different. Maybe a little more present, a little more grounded, a little less caught in the swirl of thoughts. That's the power of breath. Simple, accessible, always available. You don't need to breathe perfectly. You don't need to count to a certain number or hold it for a certain length. You just need to notice it, to be with it, to let it remind you that you're alive right now, in this moment. When anxiety starts building, when thoughts start spinning, when you feel yourself disconnecting from your body and getting lost in your head, come back to your breath. Not as a technique to manipulate your way out of discomfort, but as a way of anchoring yourself in what's real, in what's happening now, in the simple, physical fact of being alive and breathing. The breath is medicine. the simplest medicine, the deepest medicine. And your body, this precious human birth, this temporary vehicle, this messenger that's been trying to talk to you for so long, is waiting for you to come home. You don't need to be more flexible, or more fit, or more anything. You just need to listen, to notice, to feel your feet on the earth and your breath moving in and out, and the sensations arising and passing in each moment. This is the third gate, returning to the body. Not as an escape from the mind, not as a way to avoid your thoughts, but as a way of becoming whole again, integrated, present in the fullness of your human experience. When you live in your head alone, anxiety has endless space to grow, endless room to build its catastrophic scenarios. But when you come back to your body, when you feel the ground beneath you and the breath moving through you, you return to what's actually happening rather than what your mind fears might happen. And what's actually happening right now, in this moment, is almost always manageable, almost always okay. Your body knows this. It's been trying to tell you. And now, finally, you're beginning to listen. We've walked through 3 gates together, reclaiming time, freeing the mind, returning to the body. And now comes the most important part. Because Buddhist wisdom isn't meant to stay on a meditation cushion or exist only in moments of quiet reflection. It's meant to be lived, breathed, embodied in the middle of your ordinary, messy, beautiful life. This is where theory becomes practice, where understanding becomes transformation. Let's start with something that might seem simple but is actually one of the most radical acts of resistance against modern culture: doing one thing at a time. We live in an era that celebrates multitasking, that treats divided attention as a skill to be proud of. You're expected to answer emails during meetings, scroll through your phone while watching television, eat lunch while working, listen to podcasts while exercising, think about tonight's plans while having this morning's conversation. And we wonder why we're exhausted, why nothing feels satisfying, why we can't remember what we did yesterday, even though we were busy every moment. Here's what nobody tells you: multitasking is violence against presence. Every time you split your attention, you split yourself. You fragment your consciousness into pieces, none of which can fully inhabit any experience. Your body is at the dinner table, but your mind is checking work messages. Your eyes are on your child's face, but your thoughts are rehearsing tomorrow's presentation. You're physically present in 100 places, but genuinely present in none of them. Your mind split equals your life split. And when your life is split, when you're always partially here and partially somewhere else, peace becomes impossible. Because peace requires wholeness, integration, the gathering of your scattered attention back into one focused point. In Japan, there's a traditional art called chanoyu, the way of tea. It's a ceremony that can take hours, and every movement is done with complete, undivided attention. The host heats the water, not while thinking about other things, but with full presence to the sound of water beginning to boil, the steam rising, the exact moment of readiness. They whisk the tea with total focus, feeling the texture change, seeing the color deepen, hearing the rhythm of the whisk against the bowl. They serve it with a bow that contains their entire being in that gesture of offering. And the guest receives it with equal presence, feeling the warmth of the bowl in their hands, seeing the green of the tea, smelling its earthy aroma, tasting it fully, one small sip at a time. An entire life contained in one cup of tea. This isn't about being Japanese or performing ceremonies. It's about understanding something the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago, and that we've almost completely forgotten. When walking, just walk. When eating, just eat. Not walking while planning. Not eating while working. Just this. Only this. Completely this. Why does this matter for anxiety? Because divided attention creates divided peace. When you're doing 3 things at once, your nervous system can't settle. It's constantly switching gears, constantly redirecting resources, constantly in a low-grade state of emergency, trying to track multiple threads simultaneously. You might feel busy, you might feel productive, but you're also creating the perfect conditions for chronic stress and background anxiety. There's also an existential exhaustion that comes from being nowhere fully. You're at work thinking about home. You're at home thinking about work. You're with your family, but mentally reviewing your to-do list. You're on vacation, but checking email. Where are you actually? Nowhere. And that nowhereness, that constant partial presence, that perpetual sense of being between places, rather than in any place, is exhausting in a way that no amount of sleep can fix. Let me give you something practical, something you can try today. Wash one dish with complete attention. Not the whole sink full, just one dish. Feel the temperature of the water on your hands. Notice the texture of the soap, the way it bubbles and spreads. See the light reflecting off the surface of the plate as you clean it. Hear the sound of water running, of your hands moving across ceramic or glass. Feel the weight of the dish, the smoothness as food residue comes away, the satisfaction of seeing it become clean. Just one dish. Nothing else. No podcast in your ears. No phone nearby. No thoughts about what comes next. Just washing this one dish as if it's the most important thing in the world, because in this moment, it is. This isn't productivity advice. This isn't about becoming better at chores or time management. This is freedom practice. Because when you can bring your whole self to one simple task, when you can gather all your scattered attention into one focused moment, you discover something remarkable. You discover that the present moment is actually enough. That being fully here is more satisfying than being partially everywhere. That peace isn't found in getting everything done. It's found in being completely present for whatever you're doing right now. This is how you begin to live differently. One thing at a time. Completely. With your whole being gathered into this moment, this action, this breath. Now let's talk about a word that might be quietly running your entire life without you realizing it. Should. I should be further along by now. I should be calmer. I should have my life together. This shouldn't be so hard. They shouldn't have said that. The world shouldn't be this way. Every single should is a small act of violence against what is. Buddhism has a word for this, tanha, often translated as craving or thirst. But it's deeper than wanting things. It's the fundamental orientation of wanting reality to be different than it is right now. Wanting the pleasant to stay forever, wanting the unpleasant to leave immediately, wanting the neutral to become interesting. And should is how Tanha speaks in your mind. Every should creates a war with reality. Reality says, this is what's happening. This. Your mind says, no, this should be different. And in that gap between what is and what you think should be, suffering takes root and grows. There's a story that's been told in Zen and Taoist traditions for centuries, and it illustrates this perfectly. There was an old farmer who had one horse. One day, the horse ran away. His neighbors came and said, "Such bad luck." The farmer replied, "Maybe." The next day, the horse returned, bringing 7 wild horses with it. The neighbors exclaimed, "Such good luck." The farmer said, "Maybe." The following day, the farmer's son tried to ride one of the wild horses and was thrown off, breaking his leg. The neighbors said, "Such bad luck." The farmer responded, "Maybe." The day after, military officials came to the village to draft young men into the army. but the farmer's son was spared because of his broken leg. The neighbors said, "Such good luck." And the farmer said, "Maybe." This story points to something profound that the Buddha taught in the second noble truth. Suffering arises from tanha, from this constant craving for things to be other than they are. We're constantly judging reality, constantly comparing it to our mental model of how things should be, constantly generating suffering by arguing with what is. But what if you stopped? What if, like the farmer, you simply acknowledged what is, without immediately leaping to, "This is good," or "This is bad," or "This shouldn't be happening"? Now, let me be clear about something crucial. Acceptance doesn't mean approval. You can accept that something is happening right now without approving of it, without thinking it's good, without becoming passive or resigned. Acceptance is simply acknowledging reality as it actually is in this moment, not as you wish it were, not as it should be, not as it might become, but as it is, right now. Buddhism calls this yathabhuta jnana dassana, seeing things as they really are. Not through the filter of your preferences, not through the lens of your fears, not colored by your judgments, just seeing what is. And here's the paradox. When you stop fighting what is, you actually gain more power to change it. Think about it this way. If you're standing in a river and constantly fighting against the current, saying, "This current shouldn't be this strong, this water shouldn't be this cold, this river should flow the other direction," you exhaust yourself. You use all your energy resisting rather than navigating. But if you accept the reality, okay, this is a strong cold river flowing in this direction, then you can work with what is. You can swim at an angle, use the current to your advantage, find the calmest path across. Your energy goes into wise action rather than futile resistance. Ask yourself right now, what in your life are you fighting against with the word should? What situation are you in that you keep telling yourself, this shouldn't be this way? What feeling are you having that you judge with, I shouldn't feel like this? What person in your life are you resisting with, they shouldn't be the way they are? And then ask the radical question, what if you stopped fighting? Not stopped caring, not stopped acting, but stopped arguing with reality. Stop spending your precious energy on the futile task of wishing things were different before you deal with them as they actually are. From acceptance comes clarity. When you're not using all your energy fighting what is, you can see what is more clearly. And from clarity comes wise action, action that's grounded in reality rather than in how you wish reality were. This releases enormous trapped energy. Think about how much energy you spend every day arguing with reality in your mind. Traffic shouldn't be this bad. My coworker shouldn't be so difficult. I shouldn't be this anxious. The weather shouldn't be like this. My body shouldn't hurt. I should be different, better, further along. All of that is energy that could be used for living, for being present, for taking wise action, for actually responding to reality rather than fighting with it. When you release the should, when you make peace with what is, you reclaim that energy, Zen, and you discover something unexpected. Life becomes easier not because circumstances change, but because you've stopped making everything harder by resisting it first. Now let's talk about emotions, perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of human experience, and one of the primary sources of suffering. Your emotions are weather, not climate. This might be one of the most important things you learn from Buddhism, the difference between weather and climate, between temporary states and permanent identity. Right now, there's weather moving through you. Maybe it's calm and sunny. Maybe it's stormy and turbulent. Maybe it's foggy and unclear. But whatever the weather is right now, it's not who you are. It's not permanent, and it will change. The practice Buddhism teaches is called Vedananupassana, observing feelings or sensations without clinging to them. Remember when we talked about the body earlier? We mentioned 3 types of Vedana: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. This applies to emotions too. Pleasant emotions, joy, contentment, excitement, love. Your mind wants to grab these, hold on to them, make them permanent. I want to feel this way forever. And when they start to fade, because they always do, you suffer from the loss, from the grasping, from trying to keep something that was never meant to stay. Unpleasant emotions, sadness, anger, fear, anxiety, grief. Your mind wants to push these away immediately, resist them, make them stop. I shouldn't feel this way. This is terrible. I need to fix this right now. And that resistance, that pushing away, often makes the emotion intensify and last longer than it would have if you'd simply allowed it to be there and pass. Neutral emotions, that baseline state when nothing particularly intense is happening. Your mind finds this boring, unsatisfying, and immediately starts seeking something more interesting, creating drama or worry just to have something to feel. This is how suffering is created around emotions, not by the emotions themselves, but by your relationship to them. The clinging, the aversion, the denial that they're impermanent. But what if you could feel all your emotions without becoming them? What if you could experience anger without being an angry person? Feel sadness without believing you're a sad person? Experience anxiety without identifying as an anxious person? There's a story about a Zen monk who was known for his equanimity, his unshakable peace. One day, a student saw him arguing with another monk, clearly frustrated, voice raised, face flushed. Later, the student approached him confused. "Master, I thought you never got angry, but today I saw you arguing, clearly upset." The monk smiled. "I did feel anger, yes. Anger arose, moved through me, and passed. But I am not anger. I am the space in which anger can appear and disappear. The anger came like weather comes. I didn't invite it. I didn't fight it. I didn't become it. I let it move through me like wind moves through trees." This is the practice, not suppressing emotions, not pretending you don't feel what you feel, but also not identifying with emotions as if they define you. I notice sadness is very different from "I am sad." I notice anxiety is very different from "I am anxious." That difference might seem subtle, but it's the difference between freedom and imprisonment. When you say, "I am sad," you've identified your entire being with that emotion. You've become it. It defines you in that moment. And when you're identified with it, you can't see beyond it, can't remember that it's temporary, can't access the part of you that remains steady beneath all emotional weather. But when you say, "I notice sadness," you've created space. You're acknowledging the emotion without becoming it. You're the observer, the witness, the awareness in which sadness can appear without consuming your entire identity. You're the ocean, not the waves. The ocean is vast, deep, powerful. Waves rise and fall on its surface, sometimes gentle ripples, sometimes massive swells, sometimes crashing breakers. But the ocean itself, the depth of it, remains unchanged by the surface weather. You are like that ocean. Your emotions are like the waves, real, powerful, worthy of attention, but not the totality of what you are. They rise from the depth, crest, and dissolve back into the depth. And you, the awareness, the consciousness, the depth itself, remain. This is what surfing means in Buddhist practice. You're not trying to stop the waves or calm the ocean, or achieve some impossible flat stillness. You're learning to ride the waves without drowning, to stay balanced as they lift you up and set you down, to respect their power without being destroyed by it. The practice is allowing. When an emotion comes, any emotion, can you allow it to be there without immediately trying to change it, fix it, push it away, or grasp onto it? Can you give it space to exist, to express itself, to move through you without resistance? This doesn't mean you act on every emotion. Feeling anger doesn't mean you have to yell at someone. Feeling fear doesn't mean you have to run away. Feeling attraction doesn't mean you have to pursue it. Allowing emotions doesn't mean letting them control your behavior. It means giving them permission to exist in your awareness without immediately reacting to them or trying to make them disappear. And here's what's beautiful. When you allow emotions to be there without resistance, they complete their natural cycle faster. Emotions are designed to arise, peak, and pass. That's their nature. Like waves, like weather, like everything else in this impermanent universe. But when you resist them, when you fight them or suppress them or try to think your way out of them, you interrupt their natural cycle. You trap them, and they stay longer, grow stronger, become more problematic. When you allow them, yes, sadness, you can be here, I won't fight you, they complete their journey and naturally dissolve. They come, they peak, they pass, always. Nothing in your emotional life is permanent, except your capacity to be aware of it all. The joy you feel today will fade. Enjoy it while it's here, but don't cling to it as if it defines your worth or determines your future happiness. The sadness you feel today will also fade. Honor it, feel it. Let it teach you what it has to teach, but don't believe it will last forever or that it defines who you are. This is how you live with your emotions without being ruled by them. This is how you feel everything without being destroyed by anything. This is how you remain human, fully feeling, fully alive, without losing yourself in the storm. The weather changes, always, but you remain. And in that remaining, in that steady awareness that holds all emotions without being defined by any of them, you find a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, a stability that exists beneath the surface turbulence, a freedom that was there all along, waiting for you to recognize it. You're not your emotions. You're not your thoughts. You're not the weather. You're the vast, spacious, unchanging awareness in which all of this appears and disappears, arises and passes, comes and goes, like waves on an infinite ocean. And that awareness, that is who you really are. There's a teaching at the very heart of Buddhism that, once understood, changes everything about how you experience life, anxiety, joy, pain, and every moment in between. It's called anicca, impermanence. Nothing lasts. Nothing stays. Everything that arises will also pass away. Everything that comes together will eventually come apart. Every beginning contains its ending, and every ending contains the seeds of a new beginning. This isn't meant to be depressing. In fact, it's the opposite. It's one of the most liberating truths you'll ever encounter. The Buddha taught what are called the 3 marks of existence, 3 characteristics that apply to absolutely everything in this universe, including you, including your anxiety, including every experience you've ever had or ever will have. The first mark is anicca, impermanence. Nothing lasts forever. Not pain, not pleasure, not this body, not this mind state, not this relationship, not this job, not this moment. Everything is in constant flux, constantly changing, constantly becoming something else. The second mark is dukkha, often translated as suffering, but more accurately understood as unsatisfactoriness. And here's the connection. Suffering arises when we cling to things that are impermanent, as if they were permanent. When we try to hold on to the pleasant moments as if they'll never end, or when we resist the unpleasant moments as if they'll last forever, we create suffering. The third mark is anatta, non-self or not self. You are not your temporary states. You are not the anxiety you feel today, the sadness that visited yesterday, the joy that might come tomorrow. These are all temporary weather patterns moving through the vast sky of your awareness. They come, they go, but the awareness itself, that which witnesses all of this, remains. These 3 marks work together, and understanding them transforms your relationship with anxiety specifically and with life in general. Let me share a story about a mother who learned this teaching not from a book or a teacher, but from watching leaves fall. Her name was Chen, and she'd been struggling with profound grief after her teenage daughter was diagnosed with a chronic illness. Every day felt heavy, impossible, like walking through mud that never ended. She was drowning in the fear of what might happen, the anger at what had happened, the desperate wish that things could go back to how they were before. One autumn afternoon, sitting in her backyard, she watched leaves falling from the old maple tree. One by one, they released their grip on the branches and drifted down, some spinning, some gliding, each one making its own unique journey to the ground. She watched a particular leaf, bright red, beautiful, still clinging to a high branch. It held on through several gusts of wind, trembling but refusing to let go. She found herself identifying with that leaf, thinking about how she was holding on too, refusing to accept what was happening, fighting against the reality of her daughter's illness. And then the leaf let go. Not because it was forced, not because it gave up, but because it was time. It released, and instead of falling with violence or tragedy, it floated, graceful, gentle, finding its way down in its own time, landing softly on the earth where it would become nourishment for the tree's roots, helping new life grow when spring came. In that moment, Chen understood something profound. Everything has its season. Everything changes. Her daughter's health had changed and would continue to change, and fighting against that change was exhausting her, preventing her from being fully present for the life that was actually happening right now. She couldn't control whether her daughter got better or worse. But she could stop clinging to how things used to be. She could stop resisting how things were now. She could, like the leaf, release her grip and trust the process, even when she couldn't see where it would lead. This is the wisdom of impermanence. It's not about giving up or becoming passive. It's about recognizing what's true, what's real, what you can and cannot control. And in that recognition, finding a different kind of peace. You know the phrase, "This too shall pass." You've probably heard it 1,000 times, maybe even said it to yourself or others. But have you really felt its truth? This too shall pass. Both the pain and the joy. That's the part people often miss. They think of impermanence only when they're suffering, as a comfort. This won't last forever. But impermanence applies to everything equally. The anxiety you're feeling right now, it will pass. The joy you felt last week, that passed too. The love you're experiencing today, its current form will change. The anger, the peace, the confusion, the clarity, all of it is temporary. All of it is weather moving through. And here's where it gets interesting. When you truly understand this, when you feel it in your bones, you stop clinging so desperately to the good and resisting so violently against the bad. The anxiety of holding on is exhausting. Trying to make the pleasant moments last forever, trying to prevent the unpleasant moments from arriving, trying to control the uncontrollable. This is where so much of your suffering comes from. But the peace of letting go, that's spacious. That's relief. When you stop trying to freeze time around the good moments and stop trying to fast forward through the difficult ones, you can finally be present for your actual life as it unfolds, moment by moment, breath by breath. Why is impermanence liberation rather than sadness? Because it means nothing is stuck. Your current circumstances aren't permanent. Your current emotional state isn't permanent. Your current limitations aren't permanent. Even your anxiety, the thing that might feel like it's been with you forever and will never leave, even that is subject to change, is changing right now as you listen to these words. You've survived 100% of your worst days. Think about that for a moment. Every time you thought, I can't handle this, you did. Every time you believed, this will never end, it did. Every time you felt certain you wouldn't make it through, you made it through anyway. Not because you're superhuman, but because impermanence is a law of nature. Things change. Pain changes. Circumstances change. You change. Take a moment now and remember a time you thought would never end. Maybe it was heartbreak that felt like it would kill you. Maybe it was a job situation that seemed impossible to escape. Maybe it was a period of depression or anxiety that felt endless, like drowning in dark water with no surface in sight. And yet, here you are. That moment passed. That period ended. Somehow, even though you couldn't see how at the time, you moved through it and came out the other side. This isn't to minimize what you went through or what you might be going through now. Pain is real. Difficulty is real. But so is impermanence. And when you remember that every difficult period in your past eventually passed, it becomes a little easier to trust that this current difficulty will pass too. Not because you forced it to, not because you were strong enough or positive enough, but because change is the nature of things. The river keeps flowing. The seasons keep turning. The breath keeps moving in and out. And your experience keeps shifting, evolving, becoming something new, moment after moment after moment. This understanding, truly feeling it, not just intellectually knowing it, this is what allows you to hold your experiences more lightly. You can feel anxiety without believing it's a permanent condition. You can feel sadness without identifying as a sad person. You can experience difficulty without concluding that your whole life is difficult. Everything is temporary. Everything passes. And that's not a tragedy. It's the greatest relief you'll ever encounter. Now here's where this teaching becomes even more profound, more precious, more relevant to how you actually live your life. If everything is impermanent, if nothing lasts, if this moment will never come again in exactly this way, doesn't that make each moment infinitely valuable. Impermanence isn't just about relief from pain. It's about waking up to the preciousness of now. When you know time is limited, when you truly feel that this conversation, this breath, this sunset, this embrace will never happen again in exactly this way, presence becomes natural. Not forced, not performed, but natural. You stop postponing your life. You stop saying, "I'll be happy when," "I'll relax after," "I'll appreciate things once." Because you realize that there is no guaranteed future moment where everything will be perfect, and you'll finally allow yourself to be present. There's only now. This now. This breath that's happening right now and will never happen again. There's a beautiful Zen story about this that has stayed with me for years. An elderly grandmother was dying, and her family gathered around her bed, crying, holding her hands, devastated at the thought of losing her. In her final days, the hospice worker asked if there was anything she wanted, anything that would bring her comfort. The grandmother smiled and said, "I would like a cup of green tea." So they brought her tea, helped her sit up, placed the warm cup in her trembling hands. And she drank it so slowly, so completely, savoring every sip as if it contained the entire universe. Afterwards, she set down the cup, looked at her family with clear, peaceful eyes and said, "That was the best cup of tea I ever had." Her daughter asked, "Why was it so special?" And the grandmother replied, "Because I knew it was my last. So I really tasted it." This isn't morbid, it's awake. The grandmother wasn't depressed by the knowledge of her impending death. She was awakened by it. It made her present for the tea in a way she might never have been otherwise. You don't have to be dying to live this way. You just have to remember that everything is dying, everything is temporary, including you, including this moment, including the people you love, and the life you're living right now. Each conversation is unrepeatable. You'll never have this exact exchange with this person again, even if you talk to them every day for the rest of your life. This version of them, this version of you, this moment in time, it's happening once. Each breath is a gift. Not metaphorically, but literally. You're breathing right now, and you have no guarantee of the next breath, even though you assume it will come. Each inhale, each exhale is a gift you're receiving moment by moment. When you understand impermanence deeply, gratitude becomes effortless. Not because you're trying to be positive or spiritual, but because you genuinely recognize how precious and fragile and temporary everything is. Let me ask you something right now, and really take a moment to consider it. What are you grateful for right now? Not what should you be grateful for, according to someone else's standards, not what you're supposed to appreciate, but what actually touches your heart in this moment. Maybe it's something big, your health, your loved ones, a roof over your head. Maybe it's something small, the softness of the blanket you're wrapped in, the sound of rain outside, the fact that you have time to listen to this right now. Whatever it is, let yourself feel it for a moment. Not just think about it, but feel the appreciation in your body, in your heart. And then remember, this thing you're grateful for is also impermanent. It won't last forever in its current form, which makes it even more precious, doesn't it? This is the practice, holding everything lightly, but appreciating it deeply. Knowing it will change while loving it as it is. Not clinging out of fear of loss, but cherishing because of the reality of loss. This moment, exactly as it is, will never come again. Read that again, slower. This moment, exactly as it is, will never come again. Not this configuration of light and sound and sensation. Not this particular thought or feeling. Not this version of you listening to these words. Life is constantly creating new moments, and each one is absolutely unique, absolutely unrepeatable, absolutely precious, precisely because it's temporary. So what do you do with this understanding? How do you live with the knowledge of impermanence? You soften. You soften your grip on how things should be and open your hands to how things are. You soften your resistance to change and become more flexible, more flowing, more like water that adapts to whatever container it finds itself in. You soften into the preciousness of now. Not in a desperate way, not trying to squeeze every drop of meaning out of each moment until you're exhausted, but in a gentle way, just being here, just noticing, just appreciating that you're alive right now, that you can feel and think and breathe and experience this extraordinary thing called existence. The anxiety you carry often comes from trying to make things permanent that aren't, trying to control the uncontrollable, trying to guarantee a future that can't be guaranteed. But when you accept impermanence, really accept it, not just understand it intellectually, something releases. You can love without clinging. You can care without controlling. You can hope without demanding. You can live fully while holding it all lightly, knowing that nothing lasts, and that's exactly what makes it beautiful. The cherry blossoms are treasured in Japan not despite their brief bloom, but because of it. They last only a week or two, and people gather from all over to witness them, to sit beneath them, to appreciate their fleeting beauty. If cherry blossoms bloomed year-round, would anyone notice them? Would anyone plan trips to see them, write poems about them, weep at their beauty? It's the impermanence that makes them precious. And your life is the same. These days, these hours, these moments with the people you love, these experiences you're having right now, they're precious precisely because they won't last forever. So what are you waiting for? What appreciation are you postponing until later? What presents are you delaying until circumstances are perfect? What love are you holding back until you're sure? Later might not come. Perfect might never arrive. Certainty doesn't exist. But now is here. Imperfect, uncertain, temporary, absolutely precious now is here. And you have a choice in this moment and in every moment to be fully here for it, or to continue postponing your life until some imaginary future moment when everything aligns just right. The wisdom of impermanence teaches you that the time to live is now. Not because you might die tomorrow, but because this moment is the only one that actually exists. Yesterday is gone, tomorrow hasn't arrived, and this moment, this precious, fleeting, unrepeatable moment, is all you ever really have. So take a breath. A full, conscious, appreciative breath. Feel the air moving in. Feel it moving out. Feel yourself here, alive, present. This breath will never happen again. This version of you will never exist again. This moment of awareness is completely unique in the history of the universe. That's not pressure. That's not meant to make you anxious about missing out or doing it wrong. It's an invitation to wake up, to be here, to let the preciousness of impermanence soften you into deeper presence, deeper appreciation, deeper love for this temporary, beautiful, constantly changing life you've been given. Everything passes. The pain passes. The joy passes. This moment passes. And that's not sad. That's the great relief, the great liberation, the great invitation to stop waiting and start living. Right now, right here, in this impermanent, precious, absolutely unrepeatable moment. You don't need a mountaintop. You don't need a monastery in Tibet or a silent retreat center in the forest. You don't need to quit your job, leave your family, or change your entire life to find the peace you're seeking. What you need is much simpler, much more accessible, and much more powerful than you might think. You need to learn how to create micro moments of sanctuary right where you are, in the parking lot, before work, at your kitchen sink, in the 60 seconds between meetings, in the pause before you open the door to your home. These tiny moments of intentional silence, these brief returns to stillness, these sacred pauses in the middle of ordinary life, this is where your practice actually lives. Not in some idealized future when you have more time, but right here, right now, in the cracks and crevices of your regular day. Buddhism calls the practice of calming the mind samatha, and while people often think of it as formal meditation, sitting cross-legged on a cushion for hours, the real practice is bringing that quality of calm into your everyday life. Samatha in the supermarket line. Samatha while washing your hands. Samatha in the elevator, in traffic, in the waiting room. Sacred pauses are exactly what they sound like. Deliberate, conscious moments where you stop the momentum of doing and simply be. Before you eat, pause for 5 seconds. Look at your food. Take one breath. Arrive at the table before taking the first bite. Before a meeting, pause in the doorway. Feel your feet on the ground. Take one conscious breath. Let the previous moment release before entering the next one. Before sleep, pause at the edge of your bed. Instead of collapsing into unconsciousness or scrolling through your phone, sit for just 30 seconds. Acknowledge the day that's ending. Take 3 full breaths. These aren't complicated practices. They don't require training or special circumstances. They're simply moments of remembering to be present, remembering that you have a body and breath, remembering that you can choose calm even when everything around you is chaos. Research shows that 60 seconds of intentional quiet can reset your nervous system. Just 60 seconds. 1 minute of conscious breathing, of silence, of presence, and your heart rate variability improves. Your stress hormones begin to decrease. Your parasympathetic nervous system comes online. You have 60 seconds. You might think you don't, but you do. You just haven't made them sacred yet. Let me tell you about Maya, a corporate lawyer who discovered this practice not through spiritual seeking, but through sheer desperation. She was working 80-hour weeks, handling high-stakes litigation, barely sleeping, living on coffee and adrenaline. Her anxiety had reached a point where she was having panic attacks in the bathroom at work, her hands shaking during depositions, her mind racing so fast she couldn't track conversations anymore. One morning, sitting in her car in the parking garage before work, she realized she couldn't get out. Not physically, she wasn't paralyzed, but mentally and emotionally, she couldn't face walking into that building, couldn't face another day of the relentless pressure. So she just sat there. And in that sitting, in that moment of not doing forced upon her by overwhelm, something shifted. She took a breath. Not a deep, dramatic breath, just a normal one, but she noticed it. And then another, and another. For 5 minutes, she just breathed in her car, not trying to fix anything, not planning her day, not rehearsing arguments or reviewing emails, just breathing, just being, just sitting in the stillness before the storm. And when she finally walked into work, something was different. She felt more grounded, more present, less like she was already drowning before the day even began. So she started doing it intentionally. Every morning, before getting out of her car, she'd sit for 5 minutes. Just breathing, just being, creating a tiny sanctuary in the front seat of her Honda before entering the chaos of her day. Then she added another pause, 60 seconds before lunch, sitting at her desk with her eyes closed, just breathing, letting the morning release before the afternoon began. Then another 30 seconds before walking into her apartment at night, standing outside her door, breathing, letting work fall away before crossing the threshold into her home life. These micro moments, never more than 5 minutes, usually just 60 seconds, began changing her entire experience of life. Not because they eliminated stress or made her job easier, but because they gave her places to land, moments to reset, sacred pauses where she could remember who she was beneath all the doing and performing and achieving. Within 3 months, her panic attacks had stopped. Not because she'd changed jobs or circumstances, but because she'd changed her relationship to those circumstances. She'd created sanctuary not by escaping her life, but by bringing moments of stillness into the middle of it. You can do this too. Starting today. Choose one transition in your day, one moment where you move from one thing to another. Waking to getting out of bed, arriving at work to entering the building, finishing work to starting dinner, turning off the light to closing your eyes for sleep. And in that transition, pause. Just for 30 seconds, just for 3 breaths, create a micro moment of sanctuary. You don't need to do it perfectly. You don't need to feel immediately calm or enlightened or different. You just need to do it, to pause, to breathe, to remember that you're here, that you're alive, that you can access stillness even in the middle of motion. These moments accumulate like drops of water filling an ocean. One pause doesn't seem like much, but one pause every day for a week, then a month, then a year, You're training your nervous system, training your mind, training your entire being to know that stillness is available, that peace is accessible, that sanctuary isn't a place you have to travel to, but a quality of attention you can cultivate anywhere. You're training your mind to come home. Home to your body, home to your breath, home to the present moment, home to the awareness that's been here all along, underneath all the noise and rushing and worry. This is how you build a practice that actually lasts, not by making grand commitments you can't keep, not by trying to meditate for an hour every morning when you barely have 10 minutes, but by planting small seeds of stillness throughout your day. Seeds that grow, that root down, that eventually transform the entire landscape of your inner life. Now let's talk about something equally important: the environment you're cultivating your practice within, the people you're surrounding yourself with, the energies you're exposing your nervous system to day after day. Buddhism has a beautiful term for this, kalyana mittata, which translates to spiritual friendship or good companionship. The Buddha said that good friends, good companions, good comrades in the spiritual life are not just helpful to the path, they are the entire path. Why? Because your nervous system is porous. You absorb the energy of the people around you, the environments you inhabit, the conversations you participate in, the media you consume, the spaces you spend time in. You can't help it. It's how humans are designed, how we've survived as a social species. We regulate each other. When you're around someone who's anxious, who's speaking quickly, breathing shallowly, radiating stress from every pore, your nervous system picks up on that and starts to mirror it. Your heart rate increases, your breathing shallows, your muscles tense, all without conscious thought, just through proximity. But the opposite is also true. When you're around someone who breathes slowly, who speaks calmly, who has a quality of presence and groundedness, your nervous system responds to that too. You start breathing deeper without trying. Your shoulders relax. Your mind quiets. Their calm becomes contagious, teaching your system that it's safe to settle, safe to rest, safe to be present. This is why choosing your environment wisely isn't selfish. It's essential. You're not trying to isolate yourself from everyone who's struggling or avoid all difficulty. But you are making conscious choices about who and what you expose yourself to regularly, especially during times when your own nervous system needs support, when your own practice needs protection. Think about the words that surround you daily. Are they words that calm or words that agitate? Words of encouragement or constant criticism? Words of possibility or words of catastrophe? The Buddha taught about right speech as part of the Eightfold Path, speech that's truthful, helpful, kind, and timely. Not as a moral rule to follow, but as recognition that words have power, that they shape reality, that the linguistic environment we create affects the mental and emotional environment we inhabit. If you're constantly surrounded by gossip, complaint, cynicism, negativity, fear-mongering, your mind starts to take that shape. If you're regularly around words of kindness, curiosity, possibility, calm presence, your mind begins to reflect those qualities instead. The same applies to physical environments. A cluttered, chaotic space creates internal clutter and chaos. A clean, simple space with soft light and room to breathe invites your nervous system to settle. You don't need an Instagram-perfect minimalist aesthetic. You just need intentionality, creating spaces that support your practice rather than undermining it. A corner where you can sit quietly for a few minutes, without distraction. A bedroom that's actually restful, not filled with screens and stimulation. A kitchen where you can prepare and eat food with presence, rather than in front of a television or computer. Small changes in environment create significant changes in nervous system state. There's a story about a monk named Ajahn Chah, who was known for his wisdom and peace. When he was younger, he spent years going from teacher to teacher, monastery to monastery, seeking the perfect environment for enlightenment. He'd arrive at a monastery, practice intensely for months, then decide the environment wasn't quite right, too noisy, too quiet, too many rules, not enough structure, wrong kind of meditation, and he'd leave to find the next place. This went on for years until he met an old teacher in the forest who asked him a simple question: are you looking for the perfect place, or are you looking for peace? Ajahn Chah realized he'd been confusing the two. He'd been believing that peace would come from external circumstances, that if he just found the right environment, the right community, the right conditions, then his mind would settle. But the teacher showed him something different. You create the environment through your practice, through your presence, through the quality of attention you bring. Certainly, some environments support that more than others, and choosing wisely matters. But no external environment will give you what you haven't cultivated internally. So Ajahn Chah stopped seeking the perfect monastery, and instead committed to one place, one community, one practice. He chose his companions carefully, people who were sincere, who practiced with dedication, who supported each other's growth, rather than feeding each other's drama. He cultivated right speech, right environment, right companionship, not as rules, but as recognition that these things matter. And in that intentional curation, in that wise choosing, his practice deepened in ways it never had, when he was constantly seeking better conditions elsewhere. You can do the same. Not by abandoning everyone in your life who's struggling, but by being intentional about who you spend your most vulnerable time with. What voices you allow into your head, first thing in the morning and last thing at night. What environments you create and maintain. Setting boundaries is compassion, not selfishness. Saying no to environments that dysregulate you isn't mean, it's wise. Limiting time with people who constantly stir up anxiety, who criticize rather than encourage, who pull you away from your center rather than supporting you to return to it. That's not abandonment, that's self-respect. You're not responsible for fixing everyone else's nervous system, but you are responsible for tending to your own. And when you surround yourself with calm people, calm spaces, calm words, calm practices, you're teaching your system what calm feels like, giving it permission to settle, showing it that peace is possible, that presence is natural, that you don't have to live in constant high alert just because the world is chaotic. Calm is contagious, but so is chaos. Choose wisely what you want to catch. Now we come to perhaps the most important teaching of all, one that brings together everything we've explored over these hours together. Just before the Buddha died, his students gathered around him, devastated, asking what they should do without him, who would guide them, where they should turn for wisdom. And he said something that's been passed down for 2,500 years. Atta Deepa. Be a lamp unto yourself. Or as it's sometimes translated, be your own light. This wasn't dismissive or distant. It was the deepest teaching he could give, that the guidance you seek, the peace you long for, the clarity you need, it's not outside you. It has never been outside you. When the outer world is chaos, and it often is, inner stability is not just possible, it's your birthright. You're not creating sanctuary through these practices. You're recognizing that you are the sanctuary. You are the space of awareness in which all experience arises and passes. You are the stillness that holds the storm, the sky that contains all weather, the light that illuminates everything without being dimmed by anything. This isn't self-help affirmation. This isn't positive thinking or manifesting or trying to convince yourself of something that's not true. This is seeing what's always been true, what you've simply forgotten or never been taught to recognize. You are not the storm of thoughts swirling through your mind. You are the awareness that can observe the storm. You are not the waves of emotion rising and falling. You are the ocean depth that remains steady beneath the surface turbulence. You are not the anxiety or fear or worry that visits. You are the space that can hold all of it without being destroyed by any of it. Take a moment and feel into this. Not with your thinking mind, but with your direct experience. Right now, in this moment, there's awareness here. Awareness of these words, awareness of your body, awareness of sounds around you, awareness of breath, awareness of whatever emotions or thoughts are present. That awareness, who or what is that? It's not a thought, because you can observe your thoughts. It's not an emotion, because you can feel emotions arise within it. It's not your body, because you can sense your body as an object of awareness. It's the witnessing presence, the consciousness itself, the space in which all experience happens. And that has always been here. That has never been touched by any of the content that moves through it. You could call it awareness, consciousness, presence, your true nature, Buddha nature. The name doesn't matter. What matters is recognizing it, resting in it, knowing yourself as that, rather than as the temporary contents that move through it. I am the space that can hold it all. Not as an affirmation you're trying to believe, but as recognition of what's already true. This capacity to hold, to witness, to be present for everything without being overwhelmed by anything, it's not something you need to develop or achieve or earn. It's been here all along. Practice doesn't create it. Practice reveals it. All these teachings, all these practices, the slowing down, the presence, the observation of mind, the returning to body, the recognition of impermanence, the micro moments of sanctuary. None of it is making you into something you're not. It's all just clearing away the clouds so you can see the sky that's been here the whole time. You are your own light. You have always been your own light. And the greatest gift of Buddhist practice is not that it gives you something new, but that it shows you what you've always had, but forgot how to see. The anxiety, the thoughts, the emotions, the experiences, these are all weather patterns moving through the vast sky of your awareness. Real, powerful, worthy of attention and respect, but not who you are. You are the sky itself. Vast, spacious, unchanging beneath all the changing forms. And in that recognition, in that knowing yourself as awareness rather than as the contents of awareness, you find the sanctuary you've been seeking all along. Not somewhere else. Not in perfect circumstances. Not when everything is finally calm. Right here. Right now. In the midst of whatever is happening, you are the space that can hold it all. You always have been. And you always will be. These 3 hours we've shared, they're not an ending. They're a beginning. Today is day 1 not the only day. The real practice doesn't happen while listening. It happens in your living, in your choices, in the moments when you remember to pause, to breathe, to return to yourself. The Buddha's final words to his students were, "Be a light unto yourself." You already have everything you need. The peace, the clarity, the capacity to hold it all. It's been inside you all along. And when anxiety returns, and it will, because you're human, know this. It's not failure. It's opportunity to practice, to remember what you've learned, to return to center one more time. Each return strengthens you. You're not going in circles. You're spiraling upward, growing, evolving, becoming more yourself with each practice. Be gentle with yourself on this journey. You're doing something courageous, simply by seeking peace in a world that profits from your anxiety. Thank you for trusting this time with me. Know that you can return here whenever you need, whenever you want to remember. The Buddha taught something I want to leave with you. Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. If this resonated with you, leave a simple comment, maybe just the words, "I am calm," and know you're part of a community, all of us breathing through this together. May you be peaceful. May you be present. May you remember who you truly are.